right, welcome back to our YouTube channel. And today we've got a treat for you.
Yeah.
We are reviewing Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Part 1. We actually got to do a fun thing here at one of our local independent theaters. They are showing the Back to the Future trilogy on their screen since there's literally nothing else to show.
Literally nothing else to do.
So we got to see the first one on their bigger screen, which is like
screen,
a normal screen.
Which is like a fairly small screen for, an average size theater.
But no, it was still fun to do.
It was really cool. It's definitely an experience when you get to watch an older film in theaters, especially being, a film that's going on 40 years old now.
Oh.
Let's see, 85 to 15 was 30 years.
Yeah,
so
40, 20, 25,
yep.
so
about 5 years. It's 35 years old this year. So being able to see a film that's 35 years old on a big screen is a really neat experience, especially for me, because it's one of my favorite movies. I mean, I'm wearing a Back to the Future hat and a Back to the Future shirt, but...
Yeah. I mean, I'll go ahead and say that Back to the Future, I mean, obviously I'd seen it, but I'm not as in love with it as most nerds are, I feel like.
Okay.
Like, most people are like, oh my god, Back to the Future is like the greatest time travel movie ever made, and I'm like, it's okay.
But did you grow up watching it, though?
Nah, I mean, I watched it on TV once or twice, but it wasn't like one that I was always watching. Like,
I grew up watching this movie. I guess I can, credit my mom for that. She always loved the movie, and she showed it to me when I was very, very young. I mean, probably like 4 or 5 the first time I ever saw this movie, and I've watched it countless times since.
Yeah, I think, and that's a lot of people. It just depends on what they watched as a kid. Like me, obviously I watched Terminator over and over, and Jurassic Park, and Lord of the Rings, and Alien movies. All that I watched over and over.
Godzilla,
you know it. But Back to the Future it just wasn't one of them that I just went back to regularly.
Yeah.
But
I grew up a lot on 80s movies like this, Back to the Future, Breakfast Club, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, stuff like that. So
yeah, I never watched any of those.
Ferris Bueller.
I didn't watch any of those. I mean, I still haven't seen Breakfast Club or 16 Candles. I did finally.
It's sacrilegious.
I know. I did finally get around to watching Ferris Bueller's Day Off, but. That's for another retrospective. Anyway, who was involved in the making of Back to the Future?
This movie is a Steven Spielberg production.
That's right.
Directed by Robert Zemeckis. Stars quite a few people. We got Michael J. Fox. Who else we got?
We got Christopher Lloyd. We got Leah Thompson.
And then Crispin Glover. He's an odd dude.
Crispin Glover. I kind of feel bad for that guy. But also written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, if I'm not mistaken. So, talented group of people coming together to... work on this film, a bunch of 80s icons, I feel like.
Yeah, this movie was released 4th of July weekend on July 3rd, 1985.
Which is interesting because it's actually set in October, like at the beginning of the movie, I believe they're October 1985.
Yeah, around October 1985.
But anyway, the first thing I noticed watching, because I hadn't seen this movie all the way through in several years, we spend quite a bit of time in 1985, more time than I remember. I mean, I wasn't looking
definitely
at watch,
the first act of the movie is set in 1985.
So I think
it's
we
probably
spent
a good
20 minutes,
20 or so minutes. Yeah,
in
movies I believe just shy of 2 hours. It's like 115 minutes, something like that. So 20 to 25 minutes in 1985 before we go to the past.
Then we get to the past. But I will say. There's only one major plot hole I have with this movie, but for the most part, this is a very cleverly written film.
Yeah.
Pretty much all the major things that happen in 1985 or 1955 are set up here in this beginning sequence, which is really good writing and really clever, I think.
Definitely a lot of foreshadowing for events to come.
Yeah, in
the 55
even like just a lot of it's like just in the background, like you'll see a newspaper headline about the housing development thing that they're going to show being built in the past, or about the
a comment being made about how the parents met and the situation that they were in and stuff like that, and
or about the clock,
and
setting up the lightning strike, which was very important, obviously, and a bunch of stuff. I mean, we could sit here and talk about it forever, but then once we get to the past, this is very intriguing because now we're watching this from our 35 years later, and we're like, oh, look at all this cool stuff from 1985. And then there's another layer onto it. We're like, oh, look, now it's a period piece from 1955. And I really love that about this movie.
Yeah, I really do like
it. It aged really well.
This movie is something that has definitely aged really well, and I think it's something that will always appeal to a broad audience. Putting a teenager in a current era in the shoes of their parents in a past era, and a lot of people don't want would never want the movie to be made, and nothing will ever touch this movie. But I think you could It's probably sacrilegious to say being such a big fan of this movie, but I think you could remake it. It could lend itself to be remade, not done the same way. Oh yeah,
I hate remakes.
Taking some, I definitely would not be the same movie, and I wouldn't want it to be the same movie. But a similar situation, you don't even have to necessarily call it Back to the Future, but a similar situation of taking someone, say our age, and then putting them in 1985, or 20, 30 years from now, so like our kids' age, and putting them in today's society, dealing with what we're dealing with now, see how they would react to it or whatever, would be an interesting kind of movie.
Yeah.
But I probably would never want that to happen, but it could be done, and I think it could be done in an interesting way.
No, don't remake it. Let me tell
I don't want it remade, but
don't
it could
remake
be.
it. Now, I think the way this film is just, it's just really good. I mean, I'd forgotten about how good it really was, and it's not a serious film.
No.
Like, it doesn't take itself too serious. Like, all the performances are way over the top. Most of the characters are caricatures. I think the actors do a good job doing what they're told to do. I think Michael J. Fox is actually really good here as Marty McFly. And even Christopher Lloyd as this crazy Dr. Brown. I think he's actually really entertaining, really funny. Crispin Glover does a really good job playing.
He always is a really odd guy.
Yeah.
He always comes across as very odd, and he pulls it off very well. And I like how we use the same actors for the adult actors in 1995 that we're using for the teenage versions of themselves in 1955.
Yeah, sometimes the aging makeup is a little wonky.
It's a little weird sometimes.
And I don't believe that Christopher Lloyd is 30 years older than he was in 1955.
No. But I mean, I always thought he was old. Like the first time I watched it, I'm like, man, he's old. He's not that old in that movie.
Yeah.
He had to have been in his 40s when this movie came out because he's old now.
He's old now. Well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, but yeah, like you said, I think that it was a good idea, though, for them to use those same actors. But no, I think, as a time travel movie, I think it is pretty much, especially it's up there with, Terminator and,
it's about as good as it gets for time travel movies.
Time travel movies. It definitely is. The only plot hole
tries to create the least amount of plot holes as possible. So.
Yeah. The only plot, I mean, I'm sure there's like whole things online about issues, but the only major plot hole that stood out to me watching it this time was at the end of the movie, how to his parents not recognize him.
Yeah.
that's the only thing.
That's probably the biggest plot hole and that you can, blatantly see, because Doc remembers him from 35 years in the past, or 30 years in the past. Yeah. Why do his parents not be like...
Yeah, they spent a lot of time with him, during that week that he was back in the past. Yeah,
a lot of time. Like, he basically is, like, stuck tight with his dad, like, the whole movie, pushing him forward into situations.
And his mom is all over him.
His mom's, like, trying to be all over him and hitting on him. And it's a little awkward. But...
I mean, it's the one plot hole that, I see with it. But, aside from that... Oh, and I did want to comment, speaking of the tone of this movie, there's a near rape scene in this movie.
Yeah.
And in a movie made today with this kind of lighthearted tone, that scene would never be in this movie, which I thought was kind of interesting. Which, I mean, I think it needs to happen for this
It works
plot,
for the situation that it's in.
I don't know. I just thought that was kind of interesting, definitely. But, no, aside from that, I mean, I really can't. I mean, like I said, it's still not a movie that I'm going to sit and watch over and over because, like I said, I didn't grow up with it. It's not one of my 80s staples. And I'm not usually a huge fan of time travel movies as it is. Every time Star Trek would go and do a time travel episode, I was like, oh my
Speaking
God.
of Star Trek, you want to talk about, like, freaking... not allowed in nerd culture. We mixed Star Wars and Star Trek in the same line.
His line where he's like,
I'm Darth Vader from the planet Vulcan. I'm like, oh.
That is funny. That's actually a really funny line that I really
good.
appreciated. But I mean, but I really enjoyed going back to this movie. Like I said, I hadn't seen it all the way through in years, and definitely seeing it in a theater, kind of taking us back to the 80s.
Yeah.
It was definitely a fun experience.
I've always really enjoyed this movie, and it's one I'll enjoy probably till the day I die. I think it's done really, really well. Time travel's done really, really well.
Yeah.
Every aspect of this movie I think is done really, really well. I wouldn't call it quite a masterpiece, but it's pretty close in my opinion.
Yeah. And I'm excited to go on to the sequels. I have seen the second one at least once, probably twice. I know that much. But I know I've never seen the third one, at least not all the way through. So be an interesting experience. So.
And the theater that we watched this at tonight's actually playing this, so we might go back and watch them tomorrow.
I know they're playing them through tomorrow, so we might not get to see the third one on the big screen, depending on what they switch up this weekend. But I think it's time for buy it, stream it, or skip it. Since you're the big fan of this movie, I'll let you go
it's
first.
clearly a buy it. I got it right there.
You got it on the Steelbook Trilogy 30th Anniversary Edition.
30th Anniversary Edition. Comes with all 3 movies and then a bonus disc of like extra content. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I haven't sat down and watched all of it because it's like 15 hours of bonus content or something like that. But.
You know, the only time I sat through and watched hours upon hours upon hours of bonus content was when I got that stupid Star Wars Blu-ray booklet. And I sat through both of those discs, like, I don't know, 30, 40 hours of...
Oh, my.
Anyway.
Definitely worth the buy. This movie is done so well. That first act definitely does set up, everything that happens in 1955 very well. Lots of, hints and drops, name drops of situations or whatever that, get played out or played out with a twist once they get to 1955. It's all done really well. Time travel in this movie is probably done about as good as it's going to get, in my opinion. I've always loved this movie, like I've said. I think every aspect about it is done really well. Definitely not probably not a masterpiece, but pretty close. A couple minor nitpicks and a couple plot holes that would probably downgrade it. But overall, I mean, I think it's a fantastic movie, and it's a staple for me, and it's one I'm gonna watch for forever. So going back to it, I remembered when I watched it the first time, I was like, I mean, it was good, but it's just not a movie that intrigued me that much, so I wasn't super excited about going and watching it again. But I was actually kind of shocked about how good it actually was. Like I said, with time travel movies, there are inherently going to be plot holes. Yes.
But I think this one minimizes them to the best. I mean, the one glaring one, obviously, that we've talked about, but it minimizes them to the best of its ability, which is really impressive for a time travel movie. I think it's very cleverly written. Like I said, all the stuff they set up in the first act that pays off later is actually really impressive. Example of how to write a movie. I think it's paced really well. I think the 3-act structure is really strong here and done really well here. I think we'd spend just about enough. The ratio of time spent in the present to time spent in the past is just about perfect for a time travel movie. And then, of course, the cliffhanger where they're going to the future is a really nice cliffhanger. The future of 2015. Yeah. Now the past. Oh, it makes me sad. Anyway, but no, I'm going to say buy it. I'm going to say, like, it's not one of my 80s staples. I didn't grow up watching this like I did the Godzilla movies or the Jurassic Park movies or the Alien movies or the Predator movies or whatever it may be. But it's definitely worth the purchase. It's definitely definitely intriguing. I can't speak to the second and third one yet because I had to rewatch the second one and watch the third one for the first time. But as far as the first one goes, I'm going to say definitely worth buying on Blu-ray or 4K or whatever
you got. There's not a 4K release for it yet.
Oh no,
nope,
it's
not
coming.
A 4K. It'll come.
It'll be the 40th anniversary.
The 40th anniversary,
or we'll be 8K
4K.
by then or something.
Something. Who knows?
but
it's coming, I'm sure.
So 2 buy it's in a row for this podcast.
Yeah.
It's going to be pretty rare, I feel like. Podcast is a YouTube channel. I keep forgetting we're a YouTube channel now.
But other than that, next week we're going to do Back to the Future Part 2.
That's right.
The next week we'll do Back to the Future Part 3.
That's right.
And then from there on out, it's a toss.
Start Indiana Jones.
We'll do Indiana Jones,
and then
it'll
continue our Christopher Nolan thing.
Lead up to movies if they ever come out again.
Yeah. Hopefully targeting Tenet and Mulan this July.
Yep.
So
that's the goal.
That's our goal. That's what I'm hoping we'll get to watch this July. But anyway, and as I wanted to say here while we're sitting here, as trailers start coming out, we did a little test run of reaction videos with our K-pop videos, and so when major trailers start coming back out, I was hoping that we could do some trailer reaction videos. I think that'll be fun. So look forward to all the new content coming up. But
absolutely.
I guess that's it. All we have for you today. Always got to plug our other podcast, Stomp This Way, where we talk about a different monster movie every week. So don't if you want to listen to that, we're on all the major pod catching services.
Yep. If you want to follow us on our social medias, I believe we're still at DNA Film Wars on all those. So make sure you give us a like or follow, and be sure to tell your friends about us.
That's right. And as always, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like and share this video.
Absolutely.
And as always, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Catch you later.